something I talk a lot about is women's health, and especially menopause, perimenopause, all of those things. We don't call it the M word. We call it what it is, menopause.
Right.
So today I have with me Jackie Giannelli, who is a board certified nurse practitioner specializing in sexual health, urology, women's health, and a part of Elektra Health. So I am so happy to have you here.
Thanks, Amy, for having me. This is really exciting.
I know, isn't it fun? It's just
It's
fun to
really
do
fun.
this. So, and it's bright and early here. So we're just going to get started and get into all of these things that we as women go through, and sometimes used to be considered taboo. Nobody really wanted to talk about it. So let's get started just by giving a little glimpse into you. Give us the 60-second intro to Jackie.
Sure. So my name's Jackie Giannelli. I am, like you said, a family nurse practitioner. I work in private practice in New York City, seeing women going through the menopause transition and women with sexual health concerns. I am also in a clinical leadership role at Elektra Health, which is a women's health company, a digital health company. We are on a mission to smash the menopause taboo. As you said, it is a taboo still, unfortunately.
Right.
And our goal is really to empower women as they are going through the transition that is menopause. And we do that with evidence-based education, care, and community.
Wow. Okay. So let's just dig into this whole menopause thing. And I'm just going to start by sharing a personal story, because yesterday just happened to be the day that I got in with my physician and I go for my annual checkup. And she said, Amy, you are in the throes of perimenopause. I turned 50 last year. I'm going to be 51 here. And she said, it is the worst. It's the worst. And she didn't want to scare me. She didn't want to say anything other than that, but it's kind of like that phase of life. We're all going to go through it. It's like puberty, but let's just break down perimenopause a little bit and why she might have used the term, it's the worst. You kind of feel yucky.
You do. Perimenopause is kind of a rough time for some women. I mean, we know that, 80% of women will go through symptoms of menopause. And
Right.
by symptoms, we're talking about some people experience vasomotor symptoms, which are what classic symptoms of menopause are: the woman with her head in the freezer, right? Hot flashes, night sweats,
Right.
sleeplessness, things like that. And the problem with perimenopause is that it's this sort of undefined, very nuanced period of time that can last 7 to 10 years for some women, which is really
Wow.
wild. And it's really related to the fluctuating hormones, being estrogen and progesterone, that kind of are classic in this time period. And really define the period. The last final period is menopause, but it's really, we don't know that it's going to be your last period until 1 year later, when we look back retrospectively and say, okay, now I'm, beyond. So perimenopause really encompasses that window of time from when your hormones and periods start fluctuating all the way through 1 year post-final period. And for some women, this can be a rough go.
Yeah.
It can really be, these symptoms can really be disrupting quality of life.
Right.
And it's, a stigmatized time. Women really don't want to talk about, the reasons why they're sweating in their meetings, or
Right.
why they're falling asleep, at their children's cycles or things like that, because, we don't want to admit that this is happening, but we really want to change that.
Exactly. Exactly. She also said something else to me yesterday, and she said, Amy, you are 50. And
Yeah.
she said, just take that in for a minute, because you are 50. You have lived 5 decades. Your body is 50. So, treat it well and honor that. And when your body says, okay, I need to maybe give myself permission to rest today, do that. And I thought that was really good advice, because I think, as you probably see in your practice, as well as what Elektra's whole mission is, it's about empowering women to, to live fully at this phase, when there are some days when you don't feel great, but you do have to honor that, right? When you're not feeling great, you just have to say, okay, this is just part of the journey.
That's right. So the self-awareness in this period is really paramount. And, there, like you said, there are going to be good days and there are going to be bad days.
Right.
What we want women to know, and your doctor, sounds like she had a really good conversation with you. So I love that.
She's known me for a long time.
Yeah. I mean, unfortunately, we know that only 20% of OBGYNs get any training in menopause.
Right.
So you may need to sort of go into these meetings with your doctors empowered with a little bit of background information, knowing what questions to ask even sometimes.
Right.
And really being able to continue your quest for knowledge beyond the doctor's office if you're not getting the answers you feel you need. We want women to know that while this can be a really rough time for some women sail through it, the lucky few, right, that don't have any symptoms. There are those women. There are also what we call the super flashers, women who really, flash and just have these terrible
Yeah.
symptoms for years and years. But what we
Right.
want women to really know is that yes, menopause can be challenging. However, this is a transformational period for which
Right.
there are a myriad of solutions that are
Yeah.
available. And these range
Exactly.
from lifestyle to supplements to
Right.
acupuncture to medication. And
Yeah.
we meet women where they are in their journey through menopause,
Love
really
that.
wanting to know, how do you want to treat this? I'm not here to tell you, here, have some hormone replacement therapy and, pat you on the bottom and move you along. It's really about saying, how do you see yourself, treating these symptoms? And they can be all over the map. So as you can see, this takes a practitioner who really knows and
Yeah.
understands transition to menopause and how holistic it really needs to be.
Right. It
So
is holistic, exactly. And I think that it's also important to know that, yeah, I do have a very good relationship, and she knows me from even having my kids years ago and then moving back and, all of that. But it is so important to have those conversations and be able to, kind of put that fear aside. I found that the whole reason behind me starting the podcast and writing the book was because so many women share this commonality of this time around menopause, but they don't want to talk about it. They're
right.
afraid to mention those things. What are the biggest fears you see around women, when they come to you? What do you find are their biggest fears?
So definitely just feeling like a loss of femininity, feeling like
Mm,
they're gonna like lose their appeal in the world. I mean, maybe they're not vocalizing that, but that's sort of
right.
in the underpinnings and the tone of what they're saying. That can, surface in the form of sexual health concerns. Certainly, I see
Yes.
plenty of that. Many 40% of women will have what we call GSM, which is the genitourinary syndrome of menopause, which is
Oh,
thinning and dryness of the vaginal tissues, pain with
right.
intercourse, just general vulvar discomfort. And that affects women, deeply. So again,
Yes.
definitely something that, women are afraid to bring up with their doctors. And if they do, they're not always even being treated, to the degree that they should be. So
Right.
these things, just get swept under the rug. Mood changes is another really big one. I mean, women,
Yeah.
feel like they're going crazy. They feel like
Yeah.
they don't know who they are anymore. And that can happen, as a direct result of loss of estrogen affecting the serotonin in our brains. And so women have to understand that while they may feel this way right now, these things will eventually, even themselves out, but we may
Right.
need to sort of take agency over our mental health in this window of time that is perimenopause.
Yeah, that's so interesting. And I love that you said that because, you're not alone and you're not just the only one experiencing these things. And you don't feel, you do at times though feel like you're crazy. I get that a lot from women that, will send questions and say, I feel like I'm losing my identity. I'm forgetting things all the time I'm doing. And that's all just a facet of this process we go through. So
Yeah.
you talk about perimenopause. Is there a specific kind of average age that you see across the board that this happens? Because you said it can last for 7 years.
Yeah, so the average age of menopause in the United States is about 51 years.
Okay.
But then, this is a very sort of personal journey. So we
Right.
see women, for instance, I know my mother went into menopause much later into her 50s. And then unfortunately, we are seeing women enter the state of menopause and perimenopause sooner,
Really?
meaning like in their earlier 40s and some even in their late 30s. So this is getting missed clinically. I mean, people are
Yeah.
really just, women are getting pushed aside saying, no, it can't be, it can't be perimenopause. You're 39 years old.
Right.
When in fact it can
Yeah.
absolutely be perimenopause. So I think women need to understand that, be educated about the potential symptoms they may experience. I love
Right.
the idea of really having a conversation with your own mother if that's something that's possible, to find
Wow.
out how she experienced this so you
Right.
can kind of be empowered with the knowledge of how it may play out for you since there is that genetic sort of, you know,
Yeah.
synergy there.
I
Um,
love that. I
yeah,
love that. And that's a challenging conversation. Now my mom has passed, but
right.
I have older sisters and we have talked about it. And doing this too, I have a daughter who's in her 20s, she's 23, and she sees what I'm doing. And of course, well, the word menopause, that doesn't even come across her radar, but she does see that I'm engaging in these conversations. And I think that's really going to empower that generation to really, I think it's going to change. I mean, I know what you're doing with Elektra and what you do around women's health is really putting it out there in the forefront and not making it this taboo M word anymore.
Right. We
It's
have to
really
get past
amazing.
it. Yeah, we have to,
You
the
have to
things
get
we don't
past it.
talk about in the world are the things that are problematic, right? They take
Right.
on a life of their own. When we don't, know the facts around something, then,
Yes,
things start to, you know, myths around menopause become the reality. And that's not acceptable
exactly.
because women deserve better.
Yeah, I had a couple questions that I want to just throw out there. I had a question from a woman in Montana, and her name is Julie. She asked about having the conversation with her husband about menopause because she doesn't feel like he understands. So, Julie, thanks for submitting that. I think it's a great question because
That's
when
a
you mention that,
fantastic.
and of course, it's called menopause. I mean, you have the
Can
word
we change
men right
that?
there. Yeah,
Yes.
exactly.
I know.
So, what would you say?
I love this question because I think it is so important. We don't live, in a little bubble where we just move through our day. Many, women in partner relationships, with anyone, even with your children, I mean, they're going to be around you now
Right.
more than ever. We're all inside in COVID, right? Like, especially the winter's coming. So we need to have these maybe preemptive discussions with our partners saying, you know what, hey guys, today, I'm just not feeling well, or mommy's maybe going to be snapping a little bit more than usual,
Right.
and let them, and that will really give them this moment to say, okay, I'm gonna, just take a step back and be kind. In our practice, we see tons of women who, especially for their sexual health concerns or loss of libido, for instance. I mean, that's a
Yes,
big one.
it's a question.
Yeah, loss of libido is, for sure on everyone's mind, and it is multifactorial. However, involving the partner is one of the best things you can do because they want to have empathy. They love you and they want to be there for you,
Right.
um, and they just don't understand because if we weren't taught these things, why would we expect the men, or the partners to have any knowledge? So sharing that
Exactly.
and involving them is key.
Having a good conversation. I know I have a husband who can run up and down the basketball court and lose 10 pounds, and it's like I can walk and, an ounce. That was one of the questions. I have a question from Jackie in Wisconsin that asked about, oh no, this is interesting. And certainly I don't think these are too private of questions to ask you, but please, you don't have to answer if you don't feel
Sure.
comfortable. But Jackie just said she has had intermittent periods for over the years, 3 years. Would that be considered menopause?
So as long as, intermittent periods really depends on what the intermittent time
Yeah,
is.
right.
If it's been over, a 12-month period, then it could be, what we consider irregular bleeding. And any irregular bleeding should really be evaluated.
Yeah, yeah,
There's nothing else going on. Likely it is just perimenopause or menopause, but that,
right.
may require additional
Yeah.
attention there.
Thanks, Jackie, for asking that. I think that's great, follow up and that type of thing. So when then you hit this menopause phase, so that's when you haven't had a period for 12 months.
Correct.
So I know women that have said, okay, I went 10 months, and then all of a sudden it's like,
It's like,
oh, back to square one.
back to
So
square
that
one.
that is the real definition. So it's a full
It
year.
is. And
Okay.
we see this. This can be all over the map. I mean, women who are like, they think they're in the clear, and then boom, all of a sudden
Yeah.
they have like 3 or 4 regular periods in a row. And they're
Right.
like, what's going on here? So
Yes.
expect the unexpected, be ready for this bumpy ride, take everything with a grain of salt. We'll get to the other side of this.
Yeah.
And when you are, a lot of these symptoms will get better and you will feel like you again, and maybe a new normal. But that's, I think, the power of the transformation here, right? Is
Yeah.
that you see this as a new beginning. You're going to be free of your periods for the rest of your life, which, yay, who doesn't want that?
Yeah.
For
That's
some men,
true.
yeah, I mean, periods are, they're a sign of fertility, but when we're no longer fertile, there's a million other things that we can be doing with our bodies and our minds and our life.
Yes.
And so I love that idea that we're moving into this sort of next phase of life, where
Right.
we have more time for ourselves, where we have,
Yeah.
a renewed sense of purpose, and we
Right.
can really use it to reinvent who we are, which is an opportunity.
Exactly. I love that. I share that as well. So we talk about menopause and then we talk about, women's health as a whole. I mean,
Mm,
do you see things really trending around heart disease,
yeah.
those types of things, thyroid problems? Do those come on at this perimenopause stage? You hear about women's health. That was one of the things my physician said yesterday. She said, this is when things really start happening. I have a blood pressure issue that came on a few years ago. I think it's genetic, but I also think it's probably that phase of life.
Yeah, that's a great question because what we do want women to know, and doctors and practitioners in the community need to really it's important that we address this, not just because it's inconvenient to have a hot
Right.
flash, but because hot flashes can be a sign that you may be more at risk than for cardiovascular complications. There are many long-term health outcomes tied to the transition to menopause in the form of, as you said, cardiovascular disease, bone density
Yeah.
issues, mental health, cognitive changes.
Yeah.
There are many studies that are being done in this area, and more need to be done. That's part of the problem, is we don't have the best research backing this up, but we
Right.
do know that it is important to pay attention to menopause, because while estrogen has been protecting you potentially for many, many years, in the absence of it, we're now sort of like evened up with the men in terms of some of our risk factors.
Interesting.
Being
Interesting.
proactive and knowing what the most recent research is saying, and practicing accordingly is important.
Yeah, yeah, that's great. You know, the cover of People magazine has Brooke Shields on it this week, and it talks about life after 50. And I think there's so many women like yourself that are really passionate about women at this phase. You know, we're really a force. We're the quickest growing, fastest growing demographic, and there really are a lot of women sharing this passion around education and, you know, really empowering, which is so fantastic. You know, Elektra Health is something that really is a telehealth, which is the new, you know, buzzword right now. So let's
Yeah,
just walk through a little bit about Elektra. And if there's somebody listening that wants to put, you know, a phone call out or get in touch with somebody, I'll of course link that all to the episode notes. But let's talk about that telehealth. You know,
sure.
what's that process like for someone that might reach out to Elektra?
Sure. So Elektra Health, as a digital health company, certainly we offer care if that's something that you are ready to be seeking. And that does come in the form of a telehealth consult. So
Right.
similar, to now we all know about Zoom, right? So
Isn't
it's
it
really so
crazy?
different, right?
Yeah.
We were forced to learn this. And I think a lot of people thought women in their 50s, they'll never be able to use telehealth,
Right.
underestimated us again, right? So
Yes,
here we
exactly.
are. Yes, absolutely. It is for everybody. And it is a very safe, effective way to treat these symptoms, because many of them are subjective. This is a very subjective experience. You tell me you're hot flashing and you're 55 years old. I mean,
Right.
aside from, you have to rule out other things. And we at Electra are very passionate about also working with your current providers. So
Right.
we're not here to replace your provider. We're really here to maybe do as little as just educate. A visit can be
Yeah.
just educational. If you're, in a state that's not New York, where Electra provides care, and you just want to learn more about what your
Yes.
options could be potentially,
Right.
you can book an educational visit um,
Yes.
with
That's
Electra.
awesome.
If you're not even ready to book a visit, but you just want to kind of get on board with some of the resources that we're offering, right now we're doing an amazing, it's called Smash the Taboo
Yeah.
email
Yeah.
program, which is 10 days. So it's short and sweet, 3 minutes a day, straight to your inbox, evidence-based, expert vetted tips,
Awesome.
education, opportunities for community, really just like a 10-day primer on the menopause transition and what it means.
Yeah.
And that is, you can sign that up for that completely free.
That's fabulous. That's fabulous.
Absolutely.
And you know
Yeah,
what? That's putting yourself as a priority, you know, caring
right.
for yourself and taking that with all those things that you get in your inbox and all of the things you scroll through on social media. Put that aside for a little bit and take a look at this. If you get something and you sign up for this, because it really is treating yourself as a guest of honor. It's learning, and that's what
Right.
we need to do, because and building that community. I find that just with what I do, it's amazing,
Yeah.
this space and how women thrive in community and opening up the dialogue and having those courageous conversations
Right.
about
We
these
also have a
topics.
Facebook community just for that purpose. So
Yeah.
yeah, I think that women need to hear and see that
Yes.
there are other women, even though it feels like you're going through the journey alone, you
Right.
100% are not.
Right.
And people really thrive, women really thrive on
Yeah.
community, as you said. So
Yeah.
we have to honor that.
Yeah. I think that's fantastic. So let's talk about a little bit about if women that have hysterectomies. This is another
Mm.
kind of clinical question. I had that question from two women.
Yeah.
They had hysterectomies. Do they still experience these types of symptoms?
It's
Or,
a great question, because,
yeah.
as we know, many women, especially in the cancer community, breast cancer,
Yep.
we're seeing more and more of this, right? And many of them are having certain, going into what we call surgical menopause.
Right.
Surgical menopause actually happens when we remove our ovaries, not just
Mm,
our uterus. So that's an
okay.
important distinction to make. Some women have
Right.
their uterus removed for fibroids or other things, and they leave their ovaries in. They
Yeah.
won't go through a surgical menopause, but when the ovaries are removed, that is a like fall off a cliff straight into menopause, like the most rocky transition you can have.
Yeah.
Because the ovaries, they're gone and they make the
Right.
majority of our estrogen. So
Right.
we do really, depending on when that's happened, especially if it's happened before the age of 40, those women are actually, depending on what's going on, really good candidates for treatment because, as
Mm,
we know, this lack of estrogen is a setup for long-term health outcomes.
right.
So a woman who loses for estrogen at 35 versus a woman who loses for estrogen at 55 is
Wow.
really more at risk for long-term, implications of her health. So
Right. Yeah.
these are conversations that are really important to have for that.
Yeah. Okay. That was a great question. Super. Okay. I think we covered that. I'm just trying to think of other things around menopause that I know World Menopause Day was on Sunday. Is that something
Yeah.
new? How many years has that been celebrated?
Definitely for the past, I would say at least 5 years, probably
Awesome.
longer, but in the
Yeah,
mainstream, I think we're really I love this momentum we're seeing in the
I do
mainstream,
too.
bringing women's health, into the 21st century and
Yeah.
having these conversations and, the digital health world, the femtech world, as we say,
Yeah,
has been
exactly.
blossoming, with tons of
Right.
opportunities to reimagine women's healthcare, go outside of this traditional sort of model of, sit in your doctor's office, get a band-aid for your symptom, and then move on,
Move
right?
on.
That's part of
Yeah.
the reason why I really left the traditional healthcare setting is because I didn't feel as a provider that I
Right.
was helping women in the
Right.
way that I set out to as a nurse practitioner.
Yeah.
Nurses are educators by heart, by trade. I've
Exactly.
walked women through, some of the most challenging times in their life. And so to just, hand somebody an antibiotic for their UTI and not explain to them that's
Right.
related to menopause it didn't sit well with me. So
Yeah.
I went to, I love that the tech world is taking this on in that
It's
way.
fabulous. And women just have to get past that, the virtual thing, the telehealth. I know it intimidates a lot of people, but it's
Yeah,
easy to do. And it is really going to be where we're moving right now. I mean, this could be
right,
for, this is an unprecedented time, certainly with the pandemic, but the
right.
virtual health and the telehealth is going to be with us for forever.
That's right. I want women to know that, at Elektra, we're not just like a doc in a box, and a screen. Like we
Exactly.
are actual providers, treating women in our communities. We are
Right.
board certified. We are certified by the, North American Menopause Society, which is the gold standard of care in this area.
Yeah.
So we know what we're doing. We want to help women. We're here, to be an alliance. So, don't be scared.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So, what would you tell a woman who's listening right now? Because we have a variety of ages all over the country and world that listen, that's struggling a little bit and really hesitant to take that step. What would you tell them?
Yeah, I mean, I would tell them like that you said, Amy, that this is, a time for you. I mean, you have to put
Mhm.
your own oxygen mask on first. And this is,
Yeah.
there's no better example of that than now. I mean, we are outliving our ovaries by 40 years at this point,
Wow.
so we have
I
to care
never
for
thought of it that way.
ourselves. We are. I mean, women used to just, back in the dinosaur days, we would just, die at 40 or before when we were eaten by
Exactly.
something, right? So now we are living to be 80, 90 and beyond, and you're going to live half, to a third of your life post menopause. So how do you
Yeah.
want that to look?
Yeah.
And really kind of paying forward, putting your healthcare first so that you can continue to be the best mom, grandmother,
Yes.
wife, whatever it looks like for you.
Right. Right. Don't get stuck. That's what I always say. I'm talking about it this weekend, and I talk about the fact that some women feel stuck at this
Mhm.
point around health, around relationships, around so many aspects of
Yeah,
life. And
that's right.
actually, look at that stuck feeling right now as to be grateful for it because you know then that getting unstuck, there's something so much greater out there.
Yeah,
And that goes around your health as well. Take that initiative, put yourself first.
yeah, I
So
love that. Yeah.
yeah. So the question I ask everybody, and I know you're probably going to be ready for this one. So if you were sitting on the couch with your 30-year-old self, Jackie, what advice would you give her?
Oh gosh, I would say so many things. I would say that, to not worry so much about being uncomfortable, right? That the things that
Mm,
are going to make you the most uncomfortable are going to be the most ripe opportunities for growth.
yes.
So not to be afraid of those things and to kind of, to feel the feelings of that time and to, to really reflect on what's going on, but to see these, moments of challenge as opportunities.
Mm,
And to rise to that challenge. And, I hope that that's sort of, what I've done in the past
yeah.
um, to get me here.
I love that. I love that. It's so true. On the other side of fear is magic. That's what I always say, it's so true. So thank you so much for this time, introducing yourself, introducing Elektra. I'll link everything to the episode notes, but there's so much value in this. And I want to have you back because there's so many more conversations we can have. And I love the questions that I get from my community. So it's something I really want to do is have you back and address more of the questions because I have quite a list. And, we'll talk about those because that's really at the heart of what I do is, opening that dialogue and answering those tough questions. So thank you so much for sharing your insight, your expertise. And I applaud everything you're doing. I think it's fabulous. And I'll tell you, we are a force. You know what?
Right.
Life doesn't stop at menopause.
That's
and
right.
it's just beginning. So thank you so much.
Thank you for having me, Amy, and thank you for what you're doing, to honor the care of women through midlife. It's really important.
Oh, thank you. See you soon.
Bye-bye.